It is time to do something akin to Evel Knievel jumping the Snake River Canyon. It's time for me to defend the Phantom Menace. Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Kam and welcome back to the 1999 Project. And this week we've got another solo review, but for a movie that is pretty important in the grand scheme of things. It's Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Just by me saying that title, you know exactly the movie that I'm talking about. I don't need to say who directed it, who starred in it. By you clicking on this video, you have a story with this movie. I think I could safely call The Phantom Menace one of the most polarizing movies of all time. And yes, I consider another movie in this very same series one of the most polarizing movies of all time as well. I have yet to see anyone say, that was just okay when it comes to The Phantom Menace. There is either love or there is hate for this movie. Almost no in between. Even I have had my own complicated history with my love and hate of this movie. I've had more dips with my love and hate of this movie than the chip aisle in my local Publix. I think as I sit here now in 2024, this movie is far from perfect. It's like a comic book store. It's got issues. But when this movie hits, it hits hard and it hits good. And hopefully this video will be my defense of the Phantom Menace. Now, I'm sure you all are about to tear me a new one in the comments saying, Ryan, you're full of it. Like, this movie's bad. And if you think this movie's bad, by all means, in certain respects, I agree with you. Like I said, the movie's far from perfect. It's got problems. But for me personally, I sit here saying to myself, I like this movie quite a bit. George Lucas thought that he had wrapped up the Star Wars saga in 1983 with the release of The Return of the Jedi. It was a nice bow on things. The second Death Star was destroyed. Vader died sacrificing himself for his son. All live happily ever after.
Pain.
One thing that consistently was sitting in the back of his head was the idea of doing prequels. Ever since the 80s, he was thinking and turning over in his head the idea of him doing prequels, kind of setting up what would come before episodes 4, 5, and 6. And just because he was done with Star Wars doesn't mean that the world was done with Star Wars. Throughout the 80s and 90s, Star Wars mania was running wild, and it was helped along things with a Dark Horse Comics run that received critical acclaim, as well as a trilogy of books written by Timothy Zahn, which, side note, if you can find those books, read them. They're fantastic. It all seemed like Star Wars as a movie franchise was over. And then, in the October 1st, 1993 issue of Variety magazine, George Lucas announced that he was making the Star Wars prequels. I'm sure you all are here, well, some of you, I imagine, are here to hear me rip this movie apart. So here is what I don't like about The Phantom Menace. Number one, the politics. I don't like the political angles that goes on throughout. And I don't necessarily hate the concept of what they present. I hate how they're presented. The movie is very long. It's 2 hours and 20-ish minutes long. It doesn't need to be that long. There are several uninterrupted segments in which there are people in rooms talking about trade deals. There's one scene in which Queen Amidala is presenting her case for the Galactic Senate to save Naboo in front of an actual, gathering of all of the galactic senators. It's like space C-SPAN almost. I don't necessarily have a problem with the political angles being in there. I just feel like it could have been streamlined a little bit. Don't have entire segments of let us have decorum and judge and political nonsense. Like, say, the Trade Federation is invading us, we need help. It'd be like, well, you should have started off with that. Send the troops. Plus, it's low-key kind of dumb that there are people that'll be like, the Trade Federation, what? They're just funny little guys. Like, why would they invade anything? It comes across as, I don't know, like dumb, I guess. Also, there's an attitude that we all don't know who the villain of the movie is, called the Phantom Menace, when we all know that Senator Palpatine becomes Chancellor Palpatine and then becomes Emperor Palpatine. I don't know why they need to dangle the keys in front of us when we all know that Palpatine is really the villain in all of this. I kind of understand you want to build up Palpatine. I get it. Don't make him send or don't make him Chancellor right away. I'm just saying it could have been handled more efficiently. Also, the Trade Federation, in a sense, kind of makes no sense as to why they exist. I have never liked the Trade Federation, either this or Clone Wars or anything. I've never gotten the need or the understanding as to why the Trade Federation needs to be. I get their purpose. They are essentially a shell company of sorts, like Ice Station Zebra LLC in Better Call Saul. They are a shell company. Disguised, they're basically puppets tied up in their strings by Palpatine to make this whole Naboo thing legal. I understand it as a concept, but in practice, the Trade Federation could have been edited out of this movie and it would have made no difference. Say, I don't know, Count Dooku. You remember Count Dooku, right? He is introduced as basically Palpatine's apprentice at the end of Attack of the Clones, so make him the main villain. Say Count Dooku has gone rogue, he's left the Jedi Order, he has funding from a mysterious backer, and then he is sending droids to Naboo, a formerly peaceful planet, in order to stir some stuff up. I am not a screenwriter, I am not even close, but we get Count Dooku in Attack of the Clones. So why is there all of this? Oh, we don't know. These Trade Federation guys are really going off the res. Just have Count Dooku, have him be the villain up to Revenge of the Sith, and then have the twist that it was Palpatine all along. Would it be predictable? Sure. Maybe it was a scheduling thing with Christopher Lee. Who knows? But you would have had Count Dooku in The Phantom Menace, and so when you introduce him in Attack of the Clones, it doesn't come out of nowhere. It goes into my second thing that I really don't like about this movie, Jar Jar. Now, everything about Jar Jar Binks has been said. I give all my best to Ahmed Best, the man who played the character. He got a lot of heat for this from angry Star Wars fans, hate that was not deserved. The man was just doing his job. He was given crap material and he tried to make the best of it. My problem with Jar Jar is, and always will be, he is useless. And don't come at me with your Darth Jar Jar theories. Jar Jar is useless. His entire reason for being in the Star Wars universe? To get people to laugh. And it doesn't work. The extent of Jar Jar's action in this movie is falling over, stepping in something gross, and then screaming. That's it. There is a scene where he literally steps in the crap of some kind of an animal in Tatooine. I was just sitting there like, oh, so funny. Rafflecopter.
How hilarious. How highly, highly humorous.
Even worse is the fact that when the Gungans are introduced in this movie, I think there's potential there. It's all kind of tied into Naboo as a planet, so you got you people living on the surface, but then you got the other races and the other creatures that are living on the planet, who, when the droids do invade, and they do, they pretty much are invading everything on Naboo, and everyone gets affected. Like, Obi-Wan himself even brought it up.
What happens to one of you will affect the other. You must understand that.
There is logic in what he says.
I feel like that could have been interesting. Say, we end up getting a human Gungan alliance, but like smooth things along the road to making that more of a reality. Instead, the Gungan representation is Jar Jar, and it's painful. Got a couple of things that I would consider to be mixed. Not necessarily bad, but not necessarily good either. There's potential there, but it's never really acted on. First up is Anakin Skywalker himself, played by Jake Lloyd. Now, this performance has been criticized similar to what Jar Jar has been, and honestly, Jake Lloyd is fine in the movie. Like, when people meme him and be like, are you an angel? Like, that whole thing, I think it's kind of mean. I feel like Jake Lloyd did as good a job with the material that he was given as can be expected. He does have some cringe moments, sure, but I feel like the scene where he leaves his mom to go with Qui-Gon to train as a Jedi, that scene is mad underrated, and it hurts to watch every time because his mom knows it's his destiny, Qui-Gon knows it's his destiny, and Obi-Wan knows that it's his destiny, even though they haven't even met yet. But it still hurts because this boy is leaving his mom to seemingly never see her again. He sees her again tragically. That whole angle could have been worked to where Qui-Gon believes in Anakin, Obi-Wan believes in Anakin, but as we later learn, the council doesn't, with the whole, you are a part of this council, but you are not a master. Like that whole thing. I feel like that could have been leveraged, but it wasn't. Instead, young Anakin is about as deep as we learn that he is a slave that is owned by the great Gonzo if he was possessed by Pazuzu. That's and another thing that I think is pretty mixed, Darth Maul. Now there are a lot of Darth Maul fans out there, and Ray Park, whatever he was paid for this movie, it was not nearly enough. And shout out to Sam Witwer for doing an incredible job voicing Darth Maul in the Clone Wars TV show as well as Star Wars Rebels. But I have never understood the Darth Maul love. I just haven't. Honestly, there is a character in the Clone Wars universe, or the prequel universe, excuse me, that could have been easily more interesting. Asajj Ventress. Have Asajj Ventress debut in The Phantom Menace as the Padawan of Count Dooku. When you introduce Count Dooku, you also introduce Asajj Ventress. Palpatine works in the shadows, the Phantom Menace, if you will. Have Count Dooku operate everything from Geonosis, and have Asajj go out to find the Queen and bring her back, and the ransom and the whole deal. Not to mention the fact that Asajj Ventress is a far more interesting character than whatever Darth Maul was. I'm sorry, you cannot convince me that Darth Maul with robot legs is in any way cool. Like every time I see him, I'd be like, this is just stupid. Like this is Marvin the Martian science. Like what are we doing, people? But now let's get to the undisputed good parts of the movie that I think are just, like I said, when they hit home. First of all, I love the worlds. I love how we get Tatooine, sure, but we get Naboo, which I think is absolutely gorgeous. A guy that I work out with, his name is Mike. Shout out to Mike. I hope you're watching this. He actually, when he was in the military, he visited a lot of the sets that were used for the creation of Naboo. I believe it was in Spain. He'll correct me if I'm wrong. But I love the worlds, and I love seeing Naboo. I love seeing Coruscant. Coruscant is my favorite Star Wars planet. It's a big city. The entire planet is a city. I love the concept of that. It's basically Blade Runner, but instead of Los Angeles, it's the planet Earth. There's so much you can do with that. We get more worlds in the prequels like Mustafar, another one of my favorite planets, and Geonosis, another one of my favorites, as well as Camino, another one of my favorites. But the prequels opened everything up to new worlds, and I just love that so much. Another thing that I love in the movie, the relationship between Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Liam Neeson is really good in the movie, and there are not a lot of people that will say that, but I will say it. There are some people who think that Liam Neeson can't act. Watch Schindler's List and tell me that he can't act. The dude gives a muted performance here because he is a Jedi, and he has done the whole Jedi shall not know anger nor hatred nor love thing that was made canon in the prequel in Attack of the Clones. But basically, he is a senior Jedi in this moment when we first meet him, and he has fine-tuned his skills to where he doesn't get overly emotional. And I like that. I like the spirit of that. And I love how there's history, obviously, between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, but they don't waste a ton of time on it. You just look at these two together and you say to yourself, they've been through some stuff. Obi-Wan, of course, is great, played by Ewan McGregor. He understood the assignment from the very beginning, to where even the most diehard prequel haters will say that Ewan McGregor was the best part, and he is certainly one of the best parts of the prequels. But I think the whole angle where Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are a master and apprentice, I think there could have been a little more mileage with that. Call me crazy, but I think there could have been something there with the whole idea that Qui-Gon is a Jedi Master, but he is not on the Jedi Council. There's something elitist about the Jedi Council that is understated and under the radar throughout the entirety of the prequels that is not really explored all that much, and I feel like that could have been a gold mine. All we get of it is a throwaway line where Obi-Wan says, "Do not upset the Council, not again." And like, how did he upset the Council? And it's even parlayed in Attack of the Clones with the whole Sifo Dyas thing. I don't know, I feel like there could have been more to the Qui-Gon Jinn character than just he's here to be Obi-Wan's master and then he gets bodied at the end. And my absolute favorite part of this movie, the Duel of the Fates. And I don't think I really need to explain this scene to you all. Like, me just saying Duel of the Fates, the first downbeat of that song is played in your head. It just played in mine. That whole lightsaber fight between Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul is genuinely some of the best Star Wars that has ever happened. And you cannot change my mind on that. Where it starts, where the downbeat hits, Darth Maul reveals himself, Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan are like, "We'll handle this." They unsheath, and then Darth Maul pops out his double saber, and it's like, in the words of Jim Ross, business is about to pick up. And it does. So they go to where the planet's generator system is, to where those laser walls are, to where Qui-Gon is meditating, and to where Qui-Gon and ultimately dies. Then Obi-Wan and Maul have a fight, and then Maul gets sawed in half and sent down the chute. That's cinema right there. I'll even go so far as to say the rest of the battles are fun for what they are. The Gungan stuff is cringe in places, but the good guys get to win at the end, and the Gungans are actually no slouches. And the air battle stuff does go a bit long, but Anakin proves that he is indeed the best pilot in the galaxy, which is what I imagined Lucas was doing there. So at the end of the day, you can say whatever you want to about this movie, or you can say my love of it. I'm going to give this one a great rating. This movie is not good in places, but when it is good, it is so good that the positives almost cancel out the negatives. I will go so far as to say this is a good movie with some very noticeable bumps in the road. If you don't like this movie, I get it. I'll even boo as loud as you are at the parts that you hate. But I think as I sit here in 2024, I think The Phantom Menace is a good movie. Not perfect, but a good movie. A great movie, as a matter of fact. Pass it off to all of you. What did you all think of The Phantom Menace? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to read what you have to say. My name is Ryan Cam. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one.